I want to talk about the right to disconnect, because those laws come into effect in just over a week on August the 26th, and workers can now take action in the Fair Work Commission to stop them from being harassed out of hours. And that has particular relevance for school teachers who have long been campaigning for this. Mentone Grammar has released their new policy, reminding parents that teachers will only be able to send emails between 6am and 6pm, and saying there's an expectation that emails will be responded to within a 36-hour window, but not necessarily sooner. How will this work in practice, and how are schools feeling about it? David Brear is the General Secretary of the Independent Education Union. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Sammy. How are you going?
Very well, thank you. Traditionally speaking, government schools have been potentially had more protection than independent schools who are able to do their own thing a little bit more. Does this sort of bring them into line, and how is the independent school sector feeling about it?
Well, there has been a little bit of pushback, Sammy, to be honest, in relation to independent schools claiming that the new right to disconnect legislation will make it difficult for them to operate. But, I think that's overstating the impact of the legislation on those schools. So, what we've seen, there was a time, Sammy, that when basically pretty much communication with students happened strictly within class time, and communication with parents happened pretty much strictly at parent-teacher night only, and maybe at primary level when a parent dropped off their child at the beginning of the day. But what we've seen with the increases in technology, particularly email and other mobile devices, is that basically parents and students and also school leadership have taken advantage of those new technologies and seen fit to contact their staff well into time that ought to be time for those staff to be spending with their own families and friends. And, it's one of a number of factors that's really contributed to workload intensification. So we really welcome this new legislation, and we think it's overdue. When you say you welcome it, David, though, I mean, to put it bluntly, isn't part of the allure of private schools the fact that parents and carers are spending more money so they get more in return, and they're quite happy for for teachers to be, if not stressed, to be working longer than other teachers? Well, that's true. There are high demands in high fee paying in independent schools. That's true. But Sam, you've got to remember that the work's got to be sustainable. So people have got to keep turning up day after day, and the demands on our members working in some independent schools have been excessive in recent years. What I should say also is, you mentioned before Mentone Grammar putting out a policy in relation to email communication. It can still be done in a very reasonable framework, so that student, parent and leadership still have the capacity to communicate efficiently and to the extent necessary to very efficiently run a school. And that's been the case in, for as long as I've worked for the union. There's been many schools that have had very reasonable processes and policies in place for decades. This is just actually picking up on some bad practices that have continued. I'm chatting to David Brear, General Secretary of the Independent Education Union, with the right to disconnect laws coming into force in just 10 days' time. Mentone Grammar's policy, and I'm singling them out because they're the ones who have actually released it, so they're sort of ahead of the game, I guess, from other schools. But they've actually also suggested that parents phone teachers or meet in person rather than relying on emails these days, which is a glorious and ironic return to old school days. But we know, David, that what can happen in a conversation can sometimes take 10 emails back and forth, and tonally perhaps that is a bit of progress. Well, I think it is too, Sammy. I often encourage people just to pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone rather than get into a string of emails. I think actually one-on-one communication very often works better, and that those practices are in place. And there's lots of things like parent-teacher conferences and things that go on in schools that facilitate that already. It'll be very interesting to see how other schools respond, and how, of course, teachers, parents and principals respond as well. David, let's check back in shortly, and certainly after these laws take effect. Appreciate your time. Good on you, Sammy.